Hello and welcome to our new YouTube channel. It's called Biblical Insights. And for the next series, we're going to have a look at the book of Revelation. It's the last book in the New Testament, number 27. And we're going to call this series The Mark, the Beast, and the Tattoo, because that seems to be what's on everybody's minds today. The mark, the vaccination, the beast, is it all one? Has it been predicted? Is it in the Bible? Or is it just a red herring? We are going to do that. The book of Revelation comes from the name, or a Greek name called apocalypse, which means unveiling, to be unveiled. So we are going to unveil what the Bible says in the book of Revelation. Now, who is talking in the book of Revelation? Whose revelation is it? Who is the one that's doing the unveiling, and who is being unveiled? The unveiling is being done by Jesus Christ. The Bible says in verse 1, it says, the revelation of God that was given to Jesus Christ, who then gave it to an angel who communicated it to John. And John was to give it out to the 7 congregations in Asia. There are various ways of looking at the book of Revelation. It's very symbolic. There's lots of symbols in it. In fact, the book of Revelation is very much like to the New Testament what the book of Daniel is to the Old Testament. Some people have got different views, and once you've got different views and you've got different doctrines and different ideas, they've got to fit into certain little boxes. I'm going to mention just a couple of them to you. One is the preterist view. A preterist, they say, no, the revelation, that's already happened. We don't even have to worry about that. Forget about it. That's all done. It happened during the Roman time. Temple was destroyed, and it's all over. Then there's the historists. They believe that it was only from the 1st century up until the second coming of Jesus. Then we have the redemptive view, and that's from time began when good was over evil, and that most things are all symbolism and imaginary and symbolic. And then we have the futuristic view, and this futuristic view deals with the end times. And it says it's only for those Christians in the end times. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit, maybe out of each of those, and have a look and examine them ourselves, and we with our thinking caps on, and we will look at it and we will see, well, what do we think? What do we think about this? Now, we do know that the book was already given to John. So it's been given to John, and he has to give it to the churches, or to the congregations. I must tell you, I'm very hesitant about saying churches, because when we talk about churches, we often think of church buildings. We think of a place that's been made for worship. A place, a building, maybe it has a steeple, it's got stained glass windows. A church is actually the people. So a church is where the people are. The word used in Greek is called ecclesia. Ecclesia means, the better translation is the assembly, or the assembling of the people, or the congregation. They would congregate, or they would assemble in one another's house. They would assemble in a hallway. They would assemble in a field. They would assemble under trees. They would assemble anywhere, as long as they could get out there and worship the Lord. So we know that it's past because it's already been given, but we also know that it's present because it was for the assemblies of those days, and indeed for us today. And from chapter 4 right the way through to chapter 22, it talks about the second coming of Christ, when the bride will come down and meet the bridegroom. And those are the things that we want to have to look at. We also want to have a look at those marks that it keeps talking about. There are so many people getting marks, and we've got to unravel them and untie them so that we can actually understand what is going on. Now, interesting enough, the Bible does say that those who read the book will get a blessing. But I think what it really means is those who read the book and understand it will get a blessing. There's no point of just reading the book. We look at the Jews. We go back to Babylon. We've got the Jacob's had the 12 tribes, and the 12 tribes, they were split, and 10 tribes went up to the north, and they had the capital in Samaria. 2 tribes, that was Judea and Benjamin, they stayed in Jerusalem. But the Assyrians were coming down, and they circled round the 10 tribes to the north, and they captured them. And how the Assyrians captured them was amazing because they captured them and they took them away and they dispersed them. They took some and they planted them over in Macedonia. They put some in what we would call modern day Iraq. They put some in Ur. They put some in Persia. They put them all over the place. And then from these other lands, they would bring people there and they would place them in Samaria. That's why the Jews often had a problem with the Samaritans, because the Jewish people, the ones from Judea and the tribe of Benjamin, they didn't look upon the Samaritans of that day, of the biblical times, as true Jews. They were mixed. They were a mixed race, so they were not true, pure-blooded Jews. So we know that God is that northern 10 tribes. We know that there's no 10 tribes are not lost. There's no lost 10 tribes. God knows exactly where they are. We might know where they are, but God knows where they are, and He's bringing them back. Now, there have been many of these books similar to the book of Revelation, and they're written in this sort of fashion of the apocalyptic type. In other words, a type of symbols and codes. And that they did this for a reason, and the reason was so that they wouldn't get caught talking about the government. They wouldn't get caught talking about politics. You have the first book of Enoch, and the second book of Enoch was also very similar to the book of Revelation, but the Revelation was the only one that was canonized. And how do we equate that today? Well, we look today because whatever we say on YouTube or whatever we say on Facebook or Twitter or WhatsApp, whatever we're saying now, it can be censored because they've got a thing now called algorithms, and if you hit a certain sensitive note or a sensitive button or a sensitive word, whoops, your video goes off the air and you got nothing. So we also may have to talk in codes in the very near future. So what happened? Why was this book written? Why did it come about? Well, it came about because of worship. And the worship was not the worship of God. The worship was the worship of Caesar. But before Caesar was worshipped, there was a mythological goddess called Roma. Obviously, the god of Rome. And she was a powerful goddess. And whenever Rome did something well, the people blessed her and praised her and worshipped her. And the Romans had a very strong army, and they did a lot of good stuff. They stopped crime all over the known world. They made roads that were wide and were long and were straight. There was no more little dingy lanes and alleyways where people could get mugged. They ruled with an iron fist. They put up courts of justice. They introduced a lot of classical things into the culture of the people. Whilst the Greeks brought in the language, the Romans, they brought in the roads. So the Greek language and the Roman roads went together. And that's how we were blessed, by getting the gospel out, because the gospel was written in Greek and traveled along the Roman roads. But the people praised this goddess, Aroma. They were worshiping her spirit. They couldn't see her, but they were worshiping her. So eventually, the people, being people, they wanted to see what they were worshiping, so they started to put the spirit of Aroma onto the spirit of Caesar. And Julius Caesar was the first one that he was to be worshipped. He died in 14 AD, and they made a statue to Julius Caesar. After Julius Caesar, we got Augustus Caesar. And Augustus Caesar, he wasn't so keen on getting these things made, but he did allow for a couple of these temples to be made. He allowed one for the goddess Aroma, and he allowed one for Julius Caesar. After Augustus Caesar, then we start getting into Claudius, and Claudius was not that keen on it. He wasn't keen on getting all this worship done for himself, but he still went along with it, and he still allowed it to happen. We have Tiberius, and he has got a town on the Sea of Galilee, and it was named after himself. All of this worship was going on. All of this was the worst of them all in the early days was a guy called Caligula, and he came from AD 37 to AD 41. He was a real nutcase. He was a nutjob of the highest order, and he wanted everybody to bow down to him, everybody to worship him, and everybody to call him God. And as I said earlier, it was Claudius who reversed it. Once Caligula was killed and died, Claudius reversed it. But then we get another guy called Nero. Nero ruled from AD 54 to AD 68. And he also, I'm not going to say had some dementia moments, but he certainly wasn't, the lift didn't go all the way to the top there. And he started to burn buildings down, and he had to get a scapegoat for that, and he started blaming Christians. Now, he wasn't just against Christianity per se, but it was around Rome he was against them. Put them out of Rome. Priscilla and Aquila, they were put out of Rome and had to go to Corinth. They were getting sent out. The place was blazing. Nero was playing his violin, and the Christians were being burnt alive. In fact, that's what we get when we do the fireworks displays and you see a Roman candle. It represents a Christian that's being dipped in oil and set on fire, a Roman candle. So Nero, he wasn't playing with a full deck. And this guy just blamed everything on Christians and on Christianity. Then, after Nero, there was 3 quick emperors, one after the other, all within the space of about 14 to 18 months. One was called Gaba, one was called Otto, and one was called Alexius. And these guys didn't really do much. So we're coming to the emperor that we probably would know, and his name was Vespasian. He was the general in charge of the Roman army that was putting down the first Jewish revolt in the Holy Land. And he left the Holy Land in AD 69, and he left his son was called Titus, in charge. And he told Titus to make sure that you take captive Jerusalem. Vespasian went back in AD 69 to Rome, and Titus in AD 70 destroyed the temple that was in Jerusalem on Temple Mount, Mount Zion that you and I have come to know. He destroyed it, and he demolished the whole thing down. There was no more worship. The Jews were in complete, absolute chaos because the temple was the center of their worship. The temple was the place where they brought their sacrifices. The temple was the place where they had their priesthood. The temple was the place where they had the high priest. The temple was the place of the center of the whole of Judaism. And it was gone. There were no more Pharisees. There were no more Sadducees. Everything that they knew was gone. So what did they do? Well, they had to have a plan. And that plan we will open up with next time. Until then, God bless and thanks for watching.